I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Jay Scott, which I do feel a little bit like you don't require any introduction, Jay, but thank you for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Jason. Thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. So Jay is an entrepreneur, an investor, an advisor, an author, and a partner at Bar Down Investments. He's focused on buying and repositioning large multifamily properties. Over the past 12 years, Jay has built, rehabbed, bought and sold, and lent on over $70 million of property all over the country. He holds several advisory roles at several companies and is the author of 4 BiggerPockets books on real estate investing, including the one that maybe most people are most familiar about, the book on flipping houses. So again, thank you, Jay. And if you would, maybe just give us a little bit of your background, sort of where you came from and how you got to this point in your career.
Yeah, I'll do it quickly because I don't like to bore people. I probably do, but I don't like to. So I started out, I'm a business and tech guy. I'm an electrical engineer and MBA by education, worked in the tech world for a long time. Back in 2008, my wife and I decided that we wanted to do something a little bit different. We were both working ridiculous hours. We were getting ready to start a family. And so we decided to figure out something that would allow us to kind of focus on our life and not so much on our work. So long story short, we fell into real estate, and that was 2008. We flipped a house back in the summer of 2008, and then we flipped another one and another one. And it really didn't start out as something that was going to be our new profession or career. But before we knew it, that's what we were doing. We were flipping houses full time. And over the next, 8 years, we flipped several hundred houses. And that brought us to about 2016 or 17. At which point I was a little burned out from doing the single family flipping thing. I think most people that get into that business eventually find that they get burned out. It's very difficult to scale that business. So 2017, I'm trying to figure out what to do next. And I'm thinking about real estate, outside of real estate. And ultimately, I decide I really want to do multifamily for a variety of reasons. So I reach out to a good friend of mine. Her name's Ashley Wilson, who had been in multifamily for a long time. She had been very successful. Somebody that I respected tremendously. And I asked her if she would be willing to mentor me. I told her I'd be willing to essentially work for her for free for a year. And if she would, in return, just kind of teach me the business. And it was a good decision on my part. She agreed. And here we are 3 years later, and we've done several deals together, large multifamily deals together. And we're now 50-50 partners in the business at Bar Down Investments. So I'm tremendously fortunate that I was able to find somebody that's so smart, so successful, that was willing to teach me and then bring me on as a partner with her.
Yeah. I mean, that is a great way to go. I mean, I think a couple of things I'd like to touch on there that very interesting that you started in 2008 with flipping houses, which is, as probably everybody knows, wasn't the best time in terms of real estate with the crash there. But so did you start kind of on the back end when after things had crashed, or how did that sort of work out for you?
Yeah, two things kind of came together there. One, we were very lucky with timing. So we missed the big downturn, which was the beginning of 2008. We started in the summer of 2008. There was still further for the market to go down, especially where we were. We were in Atlanta, Georgia, and Atlanta got hit harder than most places in the country. So it kept going down for another year and a half after we started, but we missed the big drop at the beginning. So that was good. And then the second piece was just my ignorance. Luckily, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so had I been a little bit smarter, or not smarter, but had I been more knowledgeable about real estate, I probably never would have jumped in at that time. I'm glad I did. And in retrospect, it was absolutely the right decision to make. But a little knowledge would have created a lot of fear, and I probably would have sat on the sidelines, and I would have been like a lot of people who didn't get into real estate when they had the opportunity and put it off for way too long. But luckily, I was ignorant and I didn't know any better, so I jumped right in with both feet, and I was doing 20 or 30 flips a year within a year or two.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I mean, in the aftermath of something like that, I'm sure, that, as a lot of people know, got to experience, it made that, sort of ability to grow and scale and grow your wealth through real estate really nice, because, coming from the bottom of the crash. But yeah, it is definitely an interesting time. And I think, yeah, sometimes the knowledge, sometimes too much knowledge might actually hold you back in terms of fear, like you mentioned. I think that's a really good point, in that there's probably a little bit of healthy fear, and then there's that, kind of, well, now I'm just not doing anything, which certainly isn't the right way to go. So that's very interesting. And
Yeah,
so,
I think. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think there's a lot of people, if for anybody in this business that hasn't been through a full economic cycle, there's this idea that there are good times to invest and bad times to invest. And I'm not going to say there aren't bad times to invest. If you're doing anything transactional like flipping houses, a bad time to invest is just before a downturn, obviously. But for the most part, there's never a perfect time to invest. There's never going to be a time where everything comes together, the perfect storm of perfection, where it's easy to buy a property, it's easy to sell a property, it's easy to renovate the property in between. What I learned in 2008 was, looking back, it seemed like a really bad time to be investing, because it was, and I say this, and if you weren't investing back in 2008, it's hard to understand, but it was nearly impossible to sell a property. You'd put something on the market and literally there might be two buyers for 100 or 200 houses in that market. If you don't have the best property at the best price in the best location, you're not going to sell that property. And so we struggled, and 50% of our deals in the first year would fall out of contract, because buyers who thought they were qualified actually weren't qualified. Lending was really tight. It was hard to get a loan. And so from our perspective, it was like, this is a really impossible market. Buying is easy. We could throw a dart at the MLS and whatever it hit was probably a deal that we could make money on. But on the back end, the selling was really, really tough. I mean, things would sit for 2, 3, 6 months. And so from our perspective, it was a horrible time to be flipping houses in retrospect. Here we are 15 years later, and selling is easy. I can sell something in 2 hours. I can pre-sell something before we list it. But buying is really, really tough. And so what I've realized through the 15 years that we've been doing this is that there's never going to be a time when it's both easy to buy and easy to sell and easy to find contractors in the middle to renovate. There's always going to be some part of the business, whether it's a buyer's or seller's market, that's really difficult. And so good real estate investors are good at a few things. One, they're good at looking at the economy. They're good at looking at their local circumstances and market and saying, hey, this is what the market's offering me. I may have to pivot my business to do a different exit strategy or a different entry strategy or focus on a different type of property in order to make money. And number two, not just focusing on different types of properties and strategies, but you have to be good at all parts of the real estate cycle. You can't just be really good at acquisitions and not good at marketing and sales. You can't just be really good at marketing and sales and not good at the renovation. You can't just be really good at the renovation, but not good at finding good tenants. If you want to be successful in this business, because the market's always changing, because you never know what strategy you're going to have to pursue to make money, you need to be good at every single part of that real estate cycle, of that transaction cycle, so that no matter what the market's throwing at you, no matter what the challenges are that day, you can overcome them because you're really good at each piece in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I was actually going to sort of ask you along those lines, if you were having trouble getting things sold, did you end up sort of holding and renting any of it? Or did you, I guess maybe if you just started, then you didn't know that it was a long time to wait to sell the houses. I don't know.
Yeah, again, it was the ignorance is bliss. We didn't know what we didn't know. Our very first property, we put it on the market and it didn't sell in about 3 weeks, and it terrified us. Like we're like, okay, is this thing never going to sell? So we ended up doing a lease option for 2.5 years. Buyers never performed, ended up leaving in the middle of the night. trashed the house. We had to do a second renovation, but that was 3 years later. At that point, we were pretty good at this business, and we were able to get it sold quickly. But even on that first deal, and I like to say, we ended up buying 2 deals at the same time when we first started. Had we only bought that first deal that we thought we couldn't sell and we lease optioned, and we probably never would have done the second one. But again, timing was good for us, and we were fortunate in that we were stupid enough not to buy one at a time. So we bought 2. The second one actually went much more smoothly. So we said, okay, maybe we can do this. So yeah, we definitely had properties along the way that we would hold as rentals because we just didn't think we could sell them. Actually, my biggest regret over the last 15 years is that we had a whole lot of rentals, but we ended up selling them because the market started to turn in 2010, 11, 12, and we saw an opportunity to get out. I wish we would have held them off for the last 10 years.
Yeah. Yes. So does everybody. I think that it sold
Of
something
course.
back then. I mean,
Yeah.
you talk to about market cycles and everything. It's the market cycle has gone on, I think, a lot longer than anybody really kind of anticipated. So it just goes to show you can't predict. But I mean, I love that, you sort of didn't really have a background in this, dove right in, and then pretty quickly got to the point of being, sort of basically considered one of the experts, if not the expert on flipping houses. You wrote books about it and everything. And so, I mean, I'm curious what did that look like to you? We talk a lot about mindset and things like that on this podcast. And I think that takes a lot of, sort of self-belief and everything like that a lot of people struggle with limiting beliefs. And it almost seems like you just kind of went right through those, ignored that stuff, and just dove in and became, excellent at it.
Yeah. So I think part of it for me was, and you mentioned the part that I came in and I was far from an expert. I was probably the farthest from an expert. I mean, literally, my wife and I had just purchased our first house ever a couple months earlier, our personal residence. So I knew nothing about buying houses. I certainly knew nothing about selling houses. I could barely swing a hammer. I didn't know like which side of the nail goes into the wood. And the funny thing is, here we are 15 years later, and I mean, you wouldn't want me doing any renovation on your properties. My wife won't allow me to do demo. My wife won't allow me to change a light bulb because I'm not proficient at that. But what I was good at is running a business. And I think the big thing that a lot of people that jump into real estate don't recognize is that real estate really is a business. Too many people look at it as, okay, I'm flipping a house. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of tactical pieces that you have to be good at to flip a house. You need to know how to acquire it. You need to know how to renovate it and sell it and market it and raise money and finance. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be doing more than 1 or 2 of these, it really is a business. And there are a whole lot of business concepts that you have to understand if you want to be good at this. You have to understand supply chain. You have to understand economies of scale. You have to understand how to hire and fire people. You have to understand inventory management, and you have to understand all these business pieces. You need to be able to do your books. You need to understand what a P&L is. You need to understand what margins are. Because if you don't understand those things, I'm not saying you can't be successful flipping a house or 2 or 5 houses, but you're not going to turn this into a business that's successful if you don't understand how a business works and how you manage a business. And so for me, I think I was very fortunate that I didn't know anything about real estate because it forced me to rely on the skills that I did have, and the skills I did have were managing a business. And so from day one, I knew I wasn't going to be the guy to go in and do the renovations. I wasn't even going to be the guy to go in and put together the scope of work and figure out what needed to be done. I didn't have that knowledge. So it forced me from day one to hire people that did have that knowledge, to hire people that were really good at all those things that I wasn't good at. And so from day one, instead of working in the business, I know it's cliche, but I was working on the business. I was sitting at home working on fundraising. I was working on figuring out how to do acquisitions. I was working on marketing. I was working on hiring, as opposed to being out in the field, spending my days swinging a hammer or managing contractors or buying materials. And so ultimately, that's what allowed me to scale in this business because I had the time. I was freeing up my time to focus on the scaling and the growing the business, as opposed to actually doing the work in the business.
Yeah. And it's interesting that sort of, we talked about the timing of this. It's almost almost like that in that, since you worked on it from a business, business management standpoint, it almost made it like that was actually a good time, because although, the market crashed, like contractors were looking for work, supplies were less expensive. I mean, the resources were available. So it really just goes back to that point you made before, where it's like, there's never a time where everything's good. There's never a time where it's like right now you can sell things for a lot of money, you can make money, but finding contractors and things like that, especially if you don't already have them in place, is nearly impossible. So it's kind of a really good illustration of sort of what it's just, every market cycle is a little bit different, every place that we are. That's really great. So I mean, let's fast forward a little bit to that transition. I know you said that you were burnt out, obviously running a very successful flipping business and things like that, and so you decided to switch to multifamily. Maybe first, can we start with why? Sort of why did that? Why multifamily? I like multifamily, but I just, I'm curious sort of what went through your mind.
Yeah. So the why for me was easy. It was the other parts that were difficult, but the why was simply, I was burned out on what we were doing. I was burned out on flipping houses. It's single family is great, but if you want to keep scaling, you have to keep getting more innovative. It's not a linear, you can't scale the business linearly. It's very much a step function. If you want to go from 5 houses a year to 10 houses a year, you have to completely change your processes. If you want to go from 10 to 25 a year, you have to change your processes again. If you want to go from 25 to 50, you have to change your processes again. And I was getting to the point where it was getting more difficult to scale than the effort I was willing to put in. And maybe to say that more simply, I don't think I was smart enough to get to much bigger scale than where I was. And I recognized that it was burning me out. And so I was looking at other things to do. And the big question I had at the time was, I was sitting on a bunch of cash from my flipping business, and I was using that cash to flip houses. But now that I wasn't flipping houses, I just had a whole bunch of cash in the bank. And so the big question I was trying to answer when I decided on multifamily was, what do I do with my cash? And so I looked at investing in other people's multifamily syndications and other syndications, large deals where you go in as a passive investor. And I'm a control freak. So I wasn't thrilled with investing in other people's deals. I have done it and I still do it, but I'm very selective, and it's difficult for me to put a lot of money to work because I just don't trust other people the same way I trust myself. And that's not necessarily a good thing, but it's the reality of who I am. And so I said, well, what if I do my own big deals? Then I can make money operating them on the operating side, but I can also invest alongside my other investors with my cash, and I can use my cash and put it to work on my own deals. And so my original plan for getting into multifamily was really just to have a place to put my own cash. I wanted to do deals where I could invest alongside my investors, and I could grow my nest egg. So that was the original why of multifamily. Turns out I really love it. I'm pretty good at it, and I found an amazing partner. So it was a good decision. But 3 years ago, it really was it was as simple as I need a place to put my cash.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it is exactly that. I mean, it's a great vehicle for that, whether you're a limited or a general partner. And sort of wanting to control the deal part of it makes a lot of sense to me. So I totally get that. And you had mentioned earlier how you went to Ashley and said, hey, I just want to learn this. I'll work for you for free, that sort of thing, which I think is funny because a lot of people are reluctant to do things like that. They're like, oh, I've given up a lot or whatever. But you were already a big success. You had already created this big flipping business and had a willingness to do that. So I think that's something that people can take away and say, hey, look, if he did that, then I can do that, right? It's if someone in your position can be humble enough and willing to learn from someone else and know that, this is the best way to get into the business. Because I mean, realistically, probably the best way to learn any business is by doing it.
Yep.
Right. So I think that's fantastic. I mean, you had the connection. So what is your role at at Bar Down Investments. I know Ashley, she came on the podcast too. You know, she does construction management, which I guess I would have intuitively thought that you would have done construction management. But what are you focused on with that company?
Yeah, and this goes back to the fact that I am not the person you want managing contractors. I'm not the person you want doing renovations. Yeah, I can put together a scope of work, and yes, I can create a schedule and a budget as well as anybody. But in the day-to-day management of the property and the contractors and the construction, not my forte. And that's actually why Ashley and I work so well together. She's the most amazing asset and construction manager I've ever met. I mean, she's been doing, she comes from a line of developers in her family. And so she's been doing construction for a long time. And she understands the asset management. That's a concept that for anybody in the single family space, asset management is basically the idea that when you buy a multifamily property or any type of commercial property, there's this business plan that you have to carry out to really increase the value. And it generally involves doing physical renovations, doing management overhauls, creating new efficiencies, basically tweaking the business in a way that you can eke out every dollar to increase the value of the property. And the asset manager is probably the most important role in any commercial deal. And Ashley is absolutely amazing at it. And so had I thought this is my forte also, I probably never would have continued working for her, because when two people have the exact same skill set, it really doesn't make for a great partnership. The reason we work so well together is because she's so good at that. I'm not, but I'm really good at some other things that she's not great at. So for example, data and figuring out markets and underwriting and being able to put together financial statements and figure out business strategy and deal with HR stuff and accounting stuff and legal stuff. Like I said, I'm good at the business stuff. So our partnership is really great because I can focus on the business side of things. I can focus on the underwriting side of things. I can focus on the numbers and the processes. She focuses on the day-to-day management of the properties. And it's a match made in heaven. I mean, we really do have an exact complementary set of skills. And between us, we have pretty much all the skills necessary to scale a business like that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's the idea, right? Find a partner or partners that you work well together, similar values, but have complementary skill sets and not the same skill sets that are gonna, you're all just trying to do the same thing. So that's really, I guess, fortunate to have to mesh so well together and be able to grow the business from there.
Yeah, the big one of the bigger mistakes I see a lot of new investors make is that they don't want to go it alone, so they look for a partner. But when they look for a partner, they look for somebody exactly like themselves. They think, okay, I need somebody with a similar background, similar experience, and they don't realize that while that can make for a potentially really good friendship, doesn't necessarily make for a good partnership, because at the end of the day, you don't need somebody in your business that is good at all the things you're good at. You're already good at those things. You need somebody who's good at all the things you're bad at, and they need somebody who's good at all the things they're bad at. So at the end of the day, partnerships are a little bit different than friendships, though we don't necessarily realize this. We should be looking for people that are very much from the concept of skill set, completely opposite from us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's maybe hard to find that, I think, or it's initially hard to recognize that, probably, right? Because like, as you said, if you just like someone and you're friends with them or you get along great, that may be because, hey, let's talk about flipping houses, or whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, you can do, you're interested in the same things, but when it comes down to it, what you need is like you guys have, you need the analytical person, you need this person to asset management, maybe you need another person who's capital raising, or you're sharing whatever those roles are, between you and whoever else is in the partnership. So
I love underwriting. And so I'm a numbers guy. And so I naturally gravitate towards other people who are quantitative and numbers people and are really enjoy underwriting. And so if those are the people that I gravitate towards and I hang around, I'm probably not going to meet a whole lot of people that I would be good partners with, because I don't need a partner that's good at that stuff. I need a partner that's good at all the people skills and the construction skills and the management skills. And those aren't people I naturally like gravitate towards in a conversation. So yeah, it can be difficult to find a partner, because if we stay in our comfort zone, all we meet are people exactly like us who aren't going to make good partners.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're not looking for someone to, marry or whatever, it's not someone to go to the bar with. It's someone to build a business with. So that makes a lot of sense. Well, let me, I don't want to keep you all day, although I love these conversations.
This is great. I got all day.
Let's shift a little bit to the where I'll ask you those questions that I ask every guest, and we can definitely kind of expand within those, just so we make sure to get them in. And the first one is really just relevant to the name of the show, being Know Your Why. So what's your why, Jay? What sort of continues to push you and motivates you towards bigger and bigger success?
Yeah, so for that's easy for me. I mean, we got into this business, literally my wife and I quit very high paying corporate jobs, not to get into real estate, but to get out of the corporate jobs, because we knew that for us to be successful as a family, to accomplish what we wanted as a family, we really needed to put lifestyle and personal life before business and work. And so for me, the why has always been doing the right thing for the family and being able to put my life in front of my work. And I can't say I've always been successful at that. I probably work more than I ever imagined I would, but I don't miss the kids' soccer games or piano recitals, or I'm the one that drives them to school every day, and I'm the one that picks one of my kids up every day. And so while it's never perfect, my why has always been my family, and this business has really allowed me to accomplish that.
Yeah. And I mean, family's huge for me, and I really feel like I don't know, you figure everything out ahead of time, right? Like you made this leap before you even had kids. So I think maybe that points to your analytical nature. You're like, oh, we're gonna have kids. We need this time. But people don't always, and I didn't. I mean, what struck me is when we had our son, I had worked a lot before that. I mean, I still work a lot, but I had always just thought, okay, the key to success is just working harder, which for me oftentimes just meant working more. And so I was in that sort of, mode. And then when my son was born, all of a sudden I was struck by, I just want to be there. I don't want to miss things. I want to spend, like you said, you get to go to the soccer games. My kids aren't old enough yet for that, but I want to be there. I want them to know who I am, essentially, and not just be provider. But you've sort of figured that out before you had a plan. It sounds like you guys sort of knew what was coming and then adjusted for that. So I mean, kudos to you to figuring everything out beforehand that takes a lot of people to fall into accidentally.
I think one of the traps that a lot of people fall into is that they have stated priorities, but they state those priorities not because those are really priorities to them, because they feel like they're supposed to say it. And so oftentimes I see there's this conflict between people saying, this is what I want, and what they really want, because what you do every day is a statement of your priorities. And saying I want X, Y, or Z, and then doing A, B, and C, that's at the end of the day, what you do is really your priorities. And so for me, it would have been easy to fall into that trap of saying, hey, I care about my personal life and my work-life balance and growing a family. But if I didn't actually take action towards that, I wouldn't be true to myself in that belief. So for me, it wasn't a question of how do we do this and should I do this? It was, we made the decision, this is my priority. I'm going to do it and we'll figure it out. I see the same thing often with investors when it comes to time and money. If I ask an investor, what do you prioritize more, your time or your money? and they'll always say their time. Yeah, I can't get more time, and time's the most valuable thing, and it's the only thing that I can't buy. And so people have the right mindset there, but then I see them doing things like swinging a hammer or painting their own house to save a few dollars.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that if you enjoy doing that, but if you're doing it to make money, instead of spending 10 hours painting your own rental property, instead of hiring somebody for $20 or $25 an hour, you should be hiring somebody for $20 or $25 an hour and then going and doing something in your business that generates $50, $100, or $1,000 an hour. I always talk about the fact that if I order materials from Home Depot, I'm always going to have them delivered. I don't care if I have to buy a bag of screws for $2. I'm going to pay the $60 delivery charge, because $60 is worth a whole lot less than the hour of my time it would take to go to Home Depot and pick that up, or I'll pay my contractors to go pick it up. Because really spending time in the car is not a valuable use of my time. So what I like to tell other investors is think about what your priorities are, define them, but then take the actions to really to really carry out those priorities, and make sure that what you're saying your priorities are aligned with what you're doing and the actions you're taking.
Yeah, that's, I mean, really great advice. And it's hard to do. I mean, I find it hard to do. I because it's like you said, like, oh, I could just run to Home Depot, and I've done this a lot. Like, just, well, I can just do this myself on my house. Like I do like to swing a hammer. I do, and I have there was a time, and I still might like to flip houses just with my kids as like a project, a fun, fun thing that we could do together. I could teach them about, how to use the tools that are in the garage and all of that. But yeah, when I considered what I wanted to do from a real estate standpoint, I definitely thought about flipping houses, but my mind automatically went to, well, there's all these things I can do, so that'll make it, cost less money. But you're 100% correct. Like, that's the wrong way to think about it. If I want to have a flipping business, I shouldn't be there swinging the hammer. I should be, sort of aligning everybody to make that stuff happen. So yeah, I mean, that is spot on. And I find it a hard transition to make. I find it hard to sort of take myself out of the sort of doing it role and be, more of the manager and things like that. It is a tough transition. So, but yeah, really, really great advice. So second question, if you would tell us something about yourself, maybe that isn't common knowledge, like a hobby, a special skill, something like that. I feel like you're pretty well known, so this may be hard to answer, but if there's anything that you think people don't know about you, that would be great, that you're comfortable sharing.
Sure. Probably the biggest misnomer about me is I am a tremendous introvert. Like, everybody assumes because I do a lot of podcasts and I do a lot of speaking, that I'm an extrovert, and this is very difficult for me. Like, every day I have to psych myself up for talking to people. I'm terrified to talk on the phone. I have this phone anxiety. Like, I try and do everything I can over text message or email, but I force myself to try and do that. Speaking, I'm terrified of public speaking, even though I do it all the time. Going into a group of people I don't know is tremendously difficult. And so for me, it's been the last 15 years has been interesting because I've built this brand, and I've kind of put myself in the situation where I have to be an extrovert, or I have to at least pretend to be an extrovert, even though it doesn't come naturally for me. And so I think it's good because it's forced me to grow in certain ways. But there are a lot of days that literally at the end of the day, I just fall into bed just mentally exhausted for no other reason than just I've been talking to people all day. Yeah. And my wife's just the opposite. I mean, like, if hasn't talked to people all day, she's exhausted. She needs that stimulation of being around other people. So that's probably the biggest misnomer. Everybody assumes that I'm this big extrovert, but I'm really not.
Yeah, and it's easy to think that when you sort of see people as this public figure, but I was kind of laughing because I am too, and when I started this podcast, I wanted to start it because I called it Know Your Why, because I was struck so profoundly by my why, being my family and my kids when they were born, that it changed my whole perspective. But the other reason I did it is for exactly what you're speaking about right now. Is it's incredibly uncomfortable. I get nervous for every single one, and it's just like, I love the conversations, I love hearing people's story and everything, but at the same time, it's hard. It's a hard thing to sort of force myself to do, but I know that it's good to get outside your comfort zone. So and you mentioned the phone call thing. I hate the phone. I won't. My wife, my good friends, they laugh at me because they know I don't even want to call and order the pizza. I mean, everything's on an app now, but like when you had to call and order from restaurants and things like that, I wouldn't do it. I'd rather not get the food if someone else wasn't going to do it. So yeah, it's
the funny thing is you're young, so it's probably pretty typical for you and your friends. Like you probably grew up on text message and email. I'm old. I grew up like before text message.
As young as you think I am.
Okay. Well,
I'm 46,
okay,
so I.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then you just look young. We both, I guess we both grew up in the time when you didn't have email and you didn't have cell phones or text messages. And it was like growing up telling people I don't like talking on the phone. It was like, well, how do you live? Like, how do you exist if you don't like talking on the phone? It's always been tough. So
people don't understand. I mean, when I have to talk on the phone, I can't sit still. Like I
pace. I walk in circles.
I walk around with the phone. That's so funny. Yeah, I just walk around phone. I complain to my wife, like my ear gets sweaty. I don't like I don't like anything about it. But yeah, so text is a much easier thing to do. It's not personal, but if you're just trying to get stuff done, I think it is an easier way to function and
Yep.
I guess more comfortable from an introvert standpoint. So that's great. Okay, next question is how can people reach you? And we'll put everything that you want in the show notes. But when people hear this, if they'd like to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold?
Yeah. So if anybody
don't call.
Not phone. If anybody wants to reach out to me, you can get access to my personal website, my social media, if you want to invest with me, whatever it is. If you go to www.connectwithjscott.com, that will take you to a place that links out to everything related to me.
Yeah. Okay, good. We'll put that down in there. But yeah,
Awesome.
So you're not a hard person to find. If they probably could just Google you. And then final question, Jay, is what advice, and it's almost like from a real estate standpoint, it's almost like you've had, sort of two careers or two, career paths. But what advice would you give to people, whether it's from a flipping standpoint, multifamily, or it's just building a business? What advice would you give to people to help them try to, sort of aim towards that level of success?
Yeah. So this is literally my favorite piece of advice that I give. And if anybody's heard it before, I apologize. But what I like to tell people who are having trouble making progress, getting that first deal, because there are a lot of people out there that struggle to get that first deal. What I like to tell people is I typically meet two types of people in this business. One, I meet those people that have never done a deal. Literally, like they're struggling to do their first deal. Excuse me. And then I meet a few people. The rest of the people I meet are people that have done 5 or 10 or 50 or 100 deals. There's one type of person I never meet in this business, or I rarely ever meet in this business. And that's somebody that's done one deal. And the reason for that is if you can get to that one deal, you're going to do second and third and fifth and 10th deals. If you can get that first one, the second one is so much easier. And the third one is so much easier than that. Nobody does a deal and then says, okay, now I have to start over and get that second deal. That second deal is going to be simple once you get the first one. So what I tell people is just make a commitment to yourself to get that first deal. And if you can do that, the rest will just come easily. So don't stop till you get that first deal and trust the process and know that once you succeed in that one singular goal, you've basically built your career in real estate.
Yeah, that's actually really great. I mean, I think, you hear a lot about people. I think Michael Blanc talks about the law of the first deal and all of that stuff. It's out there, but I think the way that you put it is perfect. It's like just commit to one, and then you probably will just fall into the rest. I mean, it'll just kind of, the pieces will be there, and then you're like, oh, okay, where were all my pain points and everything, wherever I got stuck along the way. And now, okay, the next one's going to be easier, and then the one after that's going to, and then it's very as someone early in the game, for me, it's a little bit of envy, but also like motivational to see people that are now at that level where it's like, and I know it's not easy, but it's like the deals are just coming to them. They have people lined up that want to invest with them. I mean, they just, everything that you struggle with in the beginning then becomes almost like a given. So it's really cool to see that progress. And then if you think about it, if you're starting out, all those people were at that point at some point, right? Nobody started with 10 deals under their belt so that they've got everything in place. So yeah, if you can get that, I just love that sort of perspective on it. That's very cool. Well, it's been awesome. Like I said, I don't want to keep you all day. I feel like when we release the helpful tips and nuggets, it's just going to be the whole thing. I mean, there's just clips along the way. It's been really great, and I appreciate your perspective on everything and sharing your story. So thanks for coming on, Jay. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, everybody, take care. Until next time.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.